Hey guys, are you thinking about buying a Dodge Viper? Is this a car that you've always kind of wondered about, but now is the time that you're thinking, is it the right car for me? Well, let me go through this here and explain whether or not this car should or should not be a car you consider. The Viper is far from perfect. I absolutely love this car, but there are things that you really need to consider before you make the move in buying one. First of all, why do you really want the Dodge Viper? What is it about the Viper that makes you say, hey look, this is a car for me? Personally, growing up, this vehicle was my ultimate dream car. I love the performance. Even to this day, it has very decent performance. And, well, it's somewhat of an investment car. No matter where you buy this car now, in 10 to 15 years, it's still going to be worth the same, if not more, if you keep the car in good condition. The second question you need to ask yourself is, do you have a good primary and a good backup car? Because the Viper likely is going to be your third vehicle. See, a lot of people will tell you that the Viper makes a good daily driven vehicle. That's what people will say, but they're lying to you. See, this is why they're lying. Everyone would say that these cars are to be driven every single day. You're not going to have any issues if you want to drive these vehicles. Yet, my 1998 has less than 40,000 miles, but to the Viper world, it is considered high mileage. See, even from it being a 1998, 23 years old, at 100,000 miles, it would be less than 5,000 miles per year. That alone will tell you that these cars are not daily driven vehicles. These cars are our second and or third vehicles that we drive. So really guys, these cars are not going to be a primary car. And we're going to talk to you later on about some more issues why these cars are not good daily drivers. The next question you need to ask yourself is which generation and model you truly want. Do you love being the raw, unmolested type of vehicle? That would be the Gen 1. Very, very analog, very, very different than all the other generations. I love the second generation. It has the airbags. Mine does not have the ABS brakes, but I preferred to have the forged internal motor, which the 98s had. I absolutely love the second generation. However, there are some people that love the third, fourth, and fifth generations as well. So you gotta really be realistic with yourself and know where you are financially and which make and model that you want. You don't wanna settle on a vehicle that you're not in love with. These cars will either make you want to buy more Vipers, or you would have that one Viper that you absolutely hated and you would never look at the Vipers the same way ever again because your idea or your expectations fell way short. And that's where you gotta be realistic with yourself in picking which generation. Next question you have to ask yourself is which climate is best for these cars to be in? And do you live in that area of the nation that makes these cars a good investment? See, I live in sunny Florida. Well, it's more like Seattle as far as the rain goes because it rains here in the summer almost every single day. So again, it's not a very good car to drive in the rain. While yes, you can drive these cars in the rain, ideally it's not the best car to drive. Do you live in an area that's too hot or too cold? You know, these cars are fun to be driven in the springtime. That's the best time, spring and fall. It's not too cold down here and it's not too hot. You get a lot of enjoyment out of these cars. But during the summer times, these cars really sit in the garage majority of the time because it's just so hot to drive these vehicles. Do you truly have a place to store the vehicle? You know, this comes back way to this, do you have a secondary vehicle? Because of the fact that these cars, these parts on some of these vehicles are so difficult to find that if something happens to these parts, you're not going to want to drive the vehicle. so you're gonna have to have somewhere to store it. And a garage is the best place. If you have a climate control garage, is even better. But at least have it outside of the elements as much as possible. When you get heavy rains, the Gen 1 and Gen 2 are notorious for leaking. It doesn't matter if it's the RT10 or GTS, especially on the passenger side, these vehicles can leak and you will start feeling some wet carpets. So understand that that is something that can happen. Right now I have a Hennessy Viper at the house and I have to find out where it's leaking at on the passenger side. Every time it rains, it will get water in that area. So it's notoriously known to happen on the RT10s and GTSs. And so just understand that's the reason why having a garage, having a proper storage area is ideal when actually owning a Dodge Viper. The next question is, a lot of people have this mentality and that you got to be able to pay cash for these vehicles. The reality is a lot of people will still finance these vehicles, whether it's because it's a smarter move to finance with the interest rate being so low, and they can make more money on their cash investments elsewhere. It's up to each individual. But if you do need to get a loan, have you actually started looking for it? Because some of these cars and some of these banks will not actually finance these vehicles. You got to have good to excellent credit to actually get a vehicle this old, especially if you're looking at the Gen 1, Gen 2, and now even Gen 3s. So understand there are some. I financed mine with NASA Federal Credit Union. They were amazing. Pentagon Federal Credit Union, I heard, is great as well. And there are some others that actually will finance these vehicles. There are some companies that will do 10 to 12 year loans on cars. That's where a lot of people, they buy their exotics, Lamborghinis and Ferraris. They basically put these cars on such a large or basically mini home mortgage is to be able to afford them, right? Hopefully these vehicles don't depreciate before they sell these vehicles. So it's just a way to, trick the system that you're owning a vehicle, but really you can't likely afford the vehicles. Otherwise you would do the normal, 5 to 6 years of a auto loan. But again, people do these 10 to 12 years mortgages on the vehicles because financially it makes it where they can afford the monthly payments. Next thing is, have you really researched the parts, right? So if you're thinking of a Gen 2 for an example, there are some things that go bad on a Gen 2 that can be difficult to find. So understand that these cars, will have their limitations. The window regulators in the Gen 2 through Gen 5 suck. You're going to have issues. The Gen 1 didn't have any window regulators because they didn't have any windows. But the window regulators suck on these vehicles. They're very expensive to buy, but there are places that will rebuild them that I have recommended in the past. And they're very cheap to do, but then it's the cost of maintenance. I will do a video because I have to do my passenger side window and show you how easily it can be done, but it is a little bit of a pain in the ass to do. It does take time, so it's not something that's going to be easily done within a day because you got to send your part out to get the new part in. So again, that goes back to the storage aspect. It goes back to having a secondary or a primary car and possibly a secondary car, because these cars can be out of service for a few days to get parts, okay? Also, have you checked into the insurance cost and other costs on this vehicle, right? Some of us, we live paycheck to paycheck, right? Or we're maybe able to afford a little bit and we can make the monthly payments with the vehicle, whether you do a 5-year or a 10-year loan on this vehicle. But then there's other variables that we have to think about, such as the car note, the gas, oil changes, regular maintenance on these vehicles. I just got done doing the transmission flush, the rear diff flush on these vehicles. The tires can cost nearly $3,000 to replace them. it's not always cheap to drive these vehicles. So think about the insurance aspect. These cars, depending on your credit, depending on your age, depending on the area you live in, these cars can be quite cheap to insure, but they can be very, very expensive to insure as well. So that is something that you have to consider before you really start moving forward and buying a Dodge Viper. There's nothing worse than buying a car, then calling your insurance and finding out, wow, I can't afford the insurance on this car. What do I do? Now that you can afford it and you've thought about it and met all the criteria, is it worth it? Well, first of all, I know everyone on YouTube, everyone in Facebook, Instagram, everything else, they're able to afford these vehicles. These cars are cheap and they're all rich and everyone's so capable of doing everything because they live in fantasy world. You know, my car is 1/15 of the value of my house, assuming that this vehicle of my car sells between $50,000 to $75,000. I'm not somebody that wants to have a very expensive car and have a mediocre house where, you know, the car is equal to the value of my house or barely the same, where it's like a 50-50 ratio. I'd rather have my car, my dream car, be significantly less expensive than my home, because I see a home being a bigger value that will increase in value over time versus a vehicle. But ultimately, this vehicle, it's an amazing vehicle. It really truly is a special car to own. For the people who bought these cars and talk trash about them, either bought these cars blindly or they were under the wrong expectation of what these cars are limited to do. So they bought this car thinking that it was like a Corvette and you can take it everywhere and you can do things with it. And then they found out, well, geez, this car has a lot of limitations, and they start regretting their purchase. A lot of people that talked about owning a Dodge Viper has never even owned a Viper or sat in one. When I go to car shows, you know, someone didn't even know I owned a car, was talking to other people about the Viper, and I asked him questions, and he was just like giving me all the wrong information about the Viper, especially the people that say they owned a V12 version of the Viper. You gotta understand, people make up shit just to say shit, and that's what happens with the Viper. A lot of people said a lot of shit about the Viper that's completely false. It's inaccurate. The Dodge Viper truly is an amazing car. I've owned one for now over 6 years. I absolutely love this car, and if I can tell people one thing, is if you go in with the right mindset and the right expectations, this car will meet and or exceed all expectations. Guys, thanks for watching this video as always. God bless and take care.